So, I wanted to share something interesting with you that is completely unrelated to politics, kind of actually, and it indirectly relates to a bunch of stuff, but it's actually some interesting news and some interesting science. So, I don't know if you've already heard about this. We can tell certain things about a person from the shape of your face, and I know this sounds like cracked out, but it's true. So your face, say the thickness of your cheekbones, right? Your face has something called a height-width ratio, right? The width-height ratio of your face is determined by taking the width of your face across, like, say a line like on here, right above the eyebrow, and you can go straight across it with paint and then go right above the top lip and then take another two lines and you're going to go on the side of one cheekbone, down the side of the other like this looks. And then you divide the width by the height, and for instance, President Trump in this picture has a 1.86 width height ratio. Now I've done other pictures of him where it's like straight front on and he's got his jaw held differently, where I've gotten as high as a 2.11 out of him. So it's somewhere in that range, though. That's a higher range. He's a more driven type personality. And you can do this on yourself, doing it the same way that I'm doing right here. Okay. And that ratio is actually a good predictor for your drive. It has to do specifically with your testosterone levels in utero while you were forming in your mother's uterus. So this comes about because of something that we call junk DNA or non-coding DNA. But scientists have found that people born at different times of the year, right, are exposed to different amounts of melatonin in utero based on how much sun exposure their mother gets, and it alters which genes get expressed. And you could be a more or less dominant person because of the season and time of year you were born. So anyways, you can take a face measurement, and this is super fascinating to find out where you fall on that spectrum, and I can show you how to do that. So like I said, this video is not going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to find this fascinating. I do. So somebody out there probably will. So this gives you like a really quick skill to identify what type of person you're dealing with to a certain extent, how they're going to operate. Whether they're going to be covert, overt, pushy, different, less assertive type of person. And so to give you an idea of what this is this is software. There's software that does this and much, much more that we bought from an Israeli company called Sophos. And so we bought something called Faception. Faception is software that isn't just facial recognition software. What it does is it takes measurements from your face and it puts them through this like algorithm, and it spits out most likely what type of person you are. Meaning, are you aggressive? Are you more passive? Are you, and I know we know of a few of the things that it takes into account, like your height, your face height width ratio, right? It kind of tells, like for instance, our presidents. So it takes these things in. So to give you one that I can teach you, because I don't know all this stuff that they have on Faception, I can't teach you about face width ratios though. So when you look at our presidents, it turns out that a high percentage of our presidents of the United States have had a width ratio where their face was more wide, say, than the average person. The width of your cheekbones has to do with how much testosterone is activated in utero when you're forming in your mother's womb. So this right here is an article called Facial Width to Height Ratio Predicts Achievement Drive. So achievement drive. It doesn't say whether you're going to achieve or not, but the drive to achieve in U.S. presidents. This is by a G.J. Lewis, C.E. Lefebvre, and T.C. Bates. They can tell a little bit, okay? So I'm going to give you an example, and this also shows up genetically, by the way, in your hands. So if you look at your hands right now, this is scientific, you can look it up. This is not palm reading. This is just a fact. Just like having a single crease across your palm, having a simian's crease, means that you have chromosomal abnormalities, and they now screen babies when they're born by looking for the single crease, right, the simian's crease on their hand, because that actually is in most children with Down syndrome. Kids that have autism are more likely to have it, but it's, Hillary Clinton has one. Actually, we have a high percentage of presidents with the simian crease. But it doesn't mean, but it's a genetic thing that doctors look for to screen children for diseases. Okay, so in your hand, when you compare the length of your index finger to the length of your ring finger, you're going to get like a number, okay? And I don't remember, I know how to do it, but if you look it up online, you can see, but you don't have to do all the big numbers for this. You just look. And if this finger, your index finger, is longer than your ring finger, then it's been statistically proven that you're more likely to score high on the math part of an exam in an SAT test, because they screen people for this. And women usually have a shorter index finger, but not always. Having a longer index finger doesn't prove Michelle Obama's a man, by the way. It actually does happen in women. But when you have the longer ring finger, you're more likely to score very high on the writing, on the English, your ability to read and write, and actually even more so on the verbal component of the testing. And this is just statistically true. I have to get a drink of water. Okay, so I know this is total distraction from politics, but I do look at someone's face for that structure and in their hands, because it gives me an idea of how they think. So, anyways, yeah, I know it's freaky, isn't it? I'm going to show you, to give you an example of a woman who has broader cheekbones. I'm going to use Sarah Palin. So I'm going to put this picture on the screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm showing you. Sarah Palin has this very broad base. Right? So she is a more driven. She's more likely to outwardly show signs of ambitious drive. And then if you look at her fingers, usually if you want to see someone's hand, I look up waving. And you will automatically get to see an idea of their finger ratios to tell you how they think. So there we go. There's Sarah Palin. And you can see that women usually have shorter ring fingers, which, the obvious conclusion here is that women are less likely to be having as many of the speaking skills as men have. It doesn't mean that some women aren't, very good speakers. It just means we're less likely to be geniused in that way. We're more likely to be very good at science and math, believe it or not. As weird as that seems, it's the index finger thing. So having them equal. But some women do have a longer ring finger. Sarah Palin does. And she's going to be more gifted at public speaking and speaking in general. This is just the facts. So when she was in utero, that 90% of DNA that carries all the DNA of all your ancestors doesn't just get lost. It's there. But what gets activated is predicted by the condition you're in utero. And it's such a fine balance of things that can alter how you come out. I mean, it's amazing. You could literally be representing one of your great-great-great-great-grandfathers, grandmothers, going back thousands of years and be very similar to that person. Shocking. I think it's amazing. So, yep, that's him. And when you want to get a front picture as front facing as possible, you can see the width in his face from the top of his lip to right above the eye, and from edge of the outer cheekbones going across. He's got a face that's more wide than it is tall. So we've got that very ambitious type of person. So anyhow, I figured I would just read a little bit of this article too, because it's fascinating. So Faception software claims it can spot terrorist, pedophiles, and great poker players. This article was published on the 26th of May, 2016 by Lisa Vass. The Israeli startup says it can Take one look at your face and recognize facial traits undetectable to the human eye. Traits that help to identify whether you've got the face of an expert poker player, a genius, an academic, a pedophile, or a terrorist. The startup sees great potential in machines learning to detect the bad guys, claiming it's built 15 classifiers to evaluate certain traits within an 80% accuracy. And then, of course, this lady says, going on, this is still her words, 80%, is that really good enough to arrest somebody under suspicion of terrorism or pedophilia? As in, excuse me, you'd best go with us. You know, your philtrum has a suspicious shape to it, and we advise you that we're adverse to the symmetry of your lips. Okay, she brings up a great point. So, but the point is that you can narrow things down if you learn to do this. So, it would be similar to, like, you know, some people read people's body language when they talk and all of that. The first thing I go for is, what is this person actually like? So, I know what kind of, it's very awkward to me talking to the computer, because the way I have it set up here, I'm not seeing myself on the screen, but I don't see a person in front of me either, and so that's very odd. But on a gut level, which, by the way, your gut is your second mind, if you look that up, you'll find out that so much, it's gonna entirely change psychology. What they've found out about, you know, 80% of serotonin is in your gut. When you feel something, you have a gut feeling, your gut literally is considered your second mind. And when it's out of balance, it affects your brain and your brain chemistry. And that's part of the reason exercise helps with depression more than pills. If somebody's approaching you and that person's coming off real soft-spoken, like, oh, I don't know what to do, I need your help, and they seem like unsure of themselves, but they have one of those real wide faces, one of those real long ring fingers, and you're a woman, and the man comes up acting like he needs help, you would immediately go, this guy's not being who he really is. This is not how a person with that width, you know, ratio, and the face being wide like that, and the long ring finger, this is not how they would be talking. This is an act. So it's a little, it doesn't tell you for a fact, but it gives you a general idea. Well, one summer when I was 12, I went to my great aunt's house, and I was very close to her, and she lived in the farming Midwest, and she was an RN actually, but you know, out in South Dakota. And so this summer I went to see her. That whole summer she made me a lot of French toast, but she had me read a book like pretty much every day. I would want to talk to her about something when she got off her shift working at, you know, the hospital. So she would assign me a book in the morning, and she'd come back, and at the end of the day we would talk about it. So I read books across this entire wild spectrum when I was 12, but she taught me a lot of stuff, and she taught me that, she said, see that TV? It's made in China, and she told me, this is so, I'm 42. That was when I was 12. That's 30 years ago. So that would be 87. So in 87. So your TV could actually be taking measurements from your face right now, or your computer, or your video camera, and sending a report off. And if you're maybe a rare personality type, doesn't mean that you're actually, remember she said 80% accuracy? Well, it means 20% of the time it's wrong. So maybe you're a real smart person, and you're a very driven person, or you have a specific type of personality, you're a leader, that it's going to trigger something in that software. And they're going to already have you marked out for surveillance, like from before. You know, they're going to have more surveillance that they're keeping on you from even before you ever attract an attention, because they can detect that. So I said you're not going to see as many necessarily JFKs and Martin Luther Kings in our society, because they don't let them get that far ahead. When I said they cut it off in infancy, I'm referring to the fact that very unusual leader type personalities can be monitored more closely, and you know, there's ways to slow a person down so that they can't reach where they would go. Talk to you guys later. I'll respond to some interesting comments over the weekend. Take care.